Two children, the same regional corridor of Northern California, and neither of them ever came home. The cases are separated by geography and by years, but investigators who worked them came to believe they may be connected by something far darker. A single predator who was eventually convicted of killing a third child and who may have carried the truth about Amber and Ilene to his grave. The first vanished in broad daylight. The second disappeared just 2 years later, less than a mile away. The third, gone before anyone realized the pattern was repeating itself. Investigators worked the cases for decades. Profilers were called in. Tips poured in from across the country. Nothing. No arrests. No confirmed remains. No answers. Not then. Not now. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. One man's name appeared in connection with both of these unsolved disappearances, and he was eventually convicted of abducting and murdering a third child in a case that was solved. He was investigated and questioned in connection with Amber and Ilene. He sat across from detectives more than once. He was never charged in either of those disappearances. He died in prison for an unrelated crime. And the files on these 3 children remain open to this day. So the question isn't just what happened to them. The question is, did the same person take all 3? And did the system simply run out of time to prove it? The street is in Pinole, California, a quiet suburban community in the East Bay. The kind of place where children rode bikes to the corner store and nobody locked their doors before noon. Amber Swartz-Garcia was 7 years old on June 3, 1988. She was jumping rope in front of her home on San Pablo Avenue when a neighbor briefly looked away. When that neighbor looked back, Amber was gone. No scream, no struggle witnessed, just gone. The search was immediate and enormous. Hundreds of volunteers combed the hills and shoreline. The FBI joined local investigators within days. Amber's mother, Kim Swartz, became one of the most tireless advocates for missing children in California history, channeling the search for her daughter into a movement that changed state law. But Amber was never found. 23 months later, on January 30th, 1990, 13-year-old Ilene Misheloff was walking home from school in Dublin, California, roughly 20 miles from Pinole, but inside the same regional investigative orbit. She was last seen near her school, Wells Middle School, in the early afternoon. She never arrived home. No witness saw what happened. No physical evidence was ever publicly confirmed at a scene. Ilene Misheloff has never been found. And this is the part nobody talks about. The geographic and behavioral overlap between these cases drew the attention of investigators toward a registered sex offender and convicted kidnapper named Curtis Dean Anderson. Anderson had a documented history of abducting children in Northern California. He was serving a life sentence for the 2002 kidnapping and murder of 7-year-old Gianna Fairchild, a case that was solved. In that case, Anderson eventually led investigators to Gianna's remains. Before his death in 2007, Anderson made partial statements to investigators suggesting knowledge of other crimes. He hinted, he implied, he never confessed to taking Amber or Ilene. That detail changes everything, because if Anderson was responsible, he took that answer to his grave deliberately. He understood the leverage a confession held. He used it. And 2 families, along with investigators who spent careers on these files, were left with nothing they could use in a courtroom or a coroner's report. Kim Swartz continued pushing for legislative reform and answers well into the following decades. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has maintained active records on both Amber and Ilene. Dublin police and the Contra Costa County investigators have never formally closed either case. Technological advances in DNA analysis have been applied to available evidence, but no public breakthrough has been announced. One neighborhood radius. One man who may have known exactly what happened and chose silence as his final act of control. The cases of Amber Swartz-Garcia and Ilene Misheloff sit in filing cabinets and digital databases right now, waiting. The evidence hasn't changed. The witnesses who remain are older. The trail is cold in ways that forensic science may never fully reverse. Remember what I said at the start. One name appeared across multiple cases, and he was never charged for these 2. Curtis Dean Anderson is dead. The children are still missing. Still. What investigators and families have been left with are fragments, partial statements, implications, a convicted killer who understood the leverage of silence and used it to the end. Whether Anderson knew exactly what happened to Amber and Ilene, and whether he ever came close to saying so, may never be fully known. What is known is that two families are still waiting, the files are still open, and the question of what happened on those Northern California streets in the late 1980s remains unanswered.